It's been exactly 3 months since I have left investment banking. I love my new job, but here are some reasons why I actually don't regret starting my career in investment banking, and I'm very thankful and grateful for the fact that I started my career in the glorious, prestigious, everyone wants to do it, IB. First and foremost, I have investment banking a year and a half, a name of an investment bank, Investment Banking Analyst, on my resume and on my LinkedIn, and that is there forever, whether I like it or not. And for whatever reason, and perhaps because of the reasons that I'm about to detail for the rest of the video, people like that. People seem to have respect for those that have done investment banking. I think you join others who have also done investment banking. There's a lot of investment bankers, ex-investment bankers out there in all shapes and sizes in the general business corporate world, and people just like relating to people that have had similar experiences. It's the same way that alumni networks work, the same way that fraternity, sorority networks work. Even if you have a similar company background, if you came from the same town, if you enjoy having the same hairstyle, people like relating to things. And I think having that on your resume serves you well for the rest of your career. I've had many times, even not directly for interview processes or my current job, where people have noticed, oh, you were a banker before. We can relate to these things. We can relate to sucky hours. We can relate to aligning logos together. And I don't think whether or not banking directly translates into the role that you're trying to transition into, or the person that you're trying to relate to, whether or not it actually directly relates to it, whether it's tangible in the sense that what you did in banking allows you to connect to them in reality, doesn't really matter if the perception is given off the same way that anything else works, in the sense that it doesn't actually have to be what it is versus what it is perceived to be. It's a great thing to have on your resume. I think regardless of how the industry changes, there are going to be thousands of ex-bankers out there, older guys, older girls in the field that have had banking experience, are in senior positions now, and people like relating to things that they also share in common. That is not to say banking only gives off the perception. There are an infinite array of skills that I've gathered from my year and a half of experience, and I think it's only multiplied because of the hours. Whether or not the hours are justified or a good thing, they're probably not a good thing in the long run for your health, for your mental health, for your physical health, for your family health. But I think unlike any other job where there is a relative time limit of how long you work per day, because it is infinite, these skills accumulate and snowball after a long time. And no other job do you have this much experience concentrated and squeezed into the limited amount of hours in your day. And if you do something over and over and over again, you're bound to get better at it at an exponential level versus people who only do it for a couple hours a day. Besides the obvious, like being a Microsoft Office god, which is as lame as it sounds. And to that point, I think people make fun of bankers for aligning logos, being good at PowerPoint and Excel only. But the reality is, most corporate jobs, unless you're going to be a fancy engineer, involves Excel and PowerPoint. There is not much else to it unless you're beautiful at writing emails, which also you learn during banking. Whether you like it or not, whether you find it lame or not, Microsoft Office, as much as I find it funny as well, serves you great for the rest of your career, because unless you're in manager positions where you never touch the computer and you're on calls all day, there are not many other skills that you involve yourself in besides Microsoft Office. On top of that, in the less tangible arena of things that I find valuable that I've gained from my time in banking, the ability to handle multiple processes, the multiple deals that we dealt with at a time, is something very valuable. I know that there are other jobs, obviously, that you have multiple projects going on, but I think being able to cater to completely different sets of clients, different purposes, different types of deal at the same time, and having your mental real estate be filled with those various components and be able to handle that at such a young age right out of college is invaluable, priceless experience. Another thing that I've been thinking a lot about recently, especially after joining the tech startup where I mentioned that I worked a lot with younger people my age, there's not many fields that you come out and you're 23, 22, and most of the people that you work with are 30 plus years old. Although it is quite nice to be able to have colleagues that can relate to you a bit more, it's also nice to have colleagues that have been there before, give you advice on career progression as you get older, but also for yourself, learn how to deal with, manage up, work alongside those that you might not share the most with, especially in terms of age and current experiences. And I think especially in a high intensity experience like banking, where you're constantly butting heads with these individuals, there are little mannerisms, work professionalism mannerisms that you learn through working with much older people that might even be your parents' age. This last skill is more of a byproduct of how crappy banking hours are, and perhaps this is me being overly optimistic, but I think through banking I truly learned how to make use of every single minute that I have free. Because free time is so limited, you are aware and hyper aware of how limited time is in general. And especially if you transition to a less demanding role where you have a somewhat cutoff time. If work ends at 5 p.m., work ends at 6 p.m. I think I'm so used to maximizing that free time. I'm no longer on Netflix for the rest of the day, but really trying to make use of that free time because not having free time is so embedded in my body. And maybe it's not a great thing to be constantly hustling. I also have a lot of thoughts on this hustle culture that we're going into where everyone seems like they have to have 2 jobs, a side hustle, making money passively for another video. But I think being able to use and having the mentality of maximizing every free minute you have is a very, very valuable skill / habit that you gain from banking. One thing that I truly find valuable, and I think this is largely because I was in middle market M&A, and this might not be for every investment banker, it might be unique to my case and people who have had my similar experiences, but having overall industry knowledge of business as it is in this world is very helpful. Obviously, I'm not an expert in anything specifically, but I think I have a good 10%, 25% grasp on a wide variety of fields just because of the number of deals that I've been able to touch and know very obscure things that not everyone would know about business positioning, about margins in a certain industry, how well a certain industry does, how concentrated certain market shares are, what regions are good for certain industries, things that people that go directly into a real corporate role right out of college who seem to be a bit more specified in what they do and have a very hardcore knowledge of the specific thing that they're part of. I think having the wide base of knowledge is very helpful because regardless of what role you go into, you're going to face things that technically aren't meant for your role but serve as an obstacle as a part of your role. And I think having a wide array of knowledge in a wide array of things is always helpful. Favorite topic of all investment bankers, frankly the biggest reason why most people go into investment banking, money. This is just going to be the douchey part of the video, but I think having the year and a half has given me a very solid base of finances and understanding finances that I'm not too worried for the near-term future. Obviously, I still have to make a lot of money. I'm not ready to retire. I would like to retire, but I'm not ready to retire financially. But I think I'm ready to face financial difficulties if they come up. If my job suddenly disappears, I can probably support myself for at least a year. And I think that foundation is very nice, especially at a young age. I'm not going to go into compound interest, but having money earlier, frankly, is always better. I believe we touched on this in the first point, but I think networking is a huge thing that you get out of banking. Not just for members of your firm, not just MDs at your firm, but the very fact that you have been in investment banking is very much like you graduating a school and you having that alumni network based to your specific school, except I think banking sort of works even more broadly where you don't only have the banking network that is specified, that is limited to your bank, but you get access to all the bankers. Not that every banker, not every ex-banker is willing to help you out immediately just because you have investment banking, but I think it's a lot easier to relate to them because banking is such a special, specific experience that only bankers know how to relate to. And I'm sure it's a similar case for consultants, for engineers, and all jobs, but I think because it's such a pledgeship-like experience, people who had the experience before find it easier / they enjoy relating back to the times that they were also in banking. More importantly, I think because banking is so centered around networking, especially getting the actual job, but even after getting the job, while you deal with clients within the firm, outside the firm, you learn networking as a skill, a genuinely embedded part of your social behavior. And I do think some parts of it are fake and you learn to be really candidly professional all the time, which might not come across the best way. But I think being eloquent, being articulate, and being able to talk to strangers about anything, whether or not you have a intrinsic motive or not, is a very important skill as you go out into corporate America, the corporate global world. Because at the end of the day, we all deal with people. No matter what you do, at the core, all industries are centered around people. And being able to work with people is quite important. The second to last point, I think, is embedded into every single thing I said, but grit and everything else after it feeling easy. Obviously, there are a lot more demanding jobs in life, I think. Outside of the hours, there are jobs that you use your brain a lot more. You think outside the box a lot more. You deal with more difficult people. But because you have this taking the Band-Aid off quickly experience right out of college, having those demanding hours, having the amount of work concentrated in such a limited amount of time, you're able to build that grit and be hardworking, have persistence, and get through anything because you knew you got through banking and you feel like the next thing is just going to be another step in the way. I genuinely feel this. I think even growing up, I was a pretty persistent person, but during college, I kind of fell off and my perseverance was a little but I think through banking, I really learned how to rip the Band-Aid and just get after it, sit in my chair and grind straight for 12 hours because I know what it feels like to finish that and the benefits you get from finishing anything uncomfortable. And in the oddest way, the biggest takeaway and the number one reason I don't regret banking, seriously, is this YouTube channel. Realistically, no one cared / definitely doesn't care about who I am unless I talk about the things that I do and I have had the experiences that I have had. This channel is mostly alive because of banking and mostly started because of banking. People like the banking related content, corporate structure, corporate life related content. I don't think I would have had the idea to immerse myself into the digital sphere, the social media networking atmosphere, if it wasn't for me being in banking and having that background and wanting to share that on this platform. I think this kickoff of a digital career as a influencer, which I'm not at all, wouldn't have started if it wasn't for banking. So looking back, if the only thing I got out of banking is this YouTube channel, and even if this YouTube channel does not last very long, even if it only is this year, 2 years, whatever, that was worth it for me because this is the most fun I have ever these days since COVID started, period. Thanks everyone for enjoying this overly optimistic video, especially a week after I shared a video with the Goldman Sachs survey that highly criticizes banking in general. I will actually follow up this video next week with why I do regret investment banking, and then probably garner more hate because of all the contrasting things that I always say. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Let's go.